Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to the Mic Drop Show. And I am your host, Mike Morawski, investor, operator, deal maker. I buy real estate and share the playbook with you. Step by step, I give you those ideas and that blueprint, how to grow your real estate portfolio, multifamily portfolio. Hey, each week we turn complex moves into clear steps you can use today, tomorrow, and in the future. We attack all this with money, not just myth. Hey, little or no money down, smart strategies, owner financing, creative financing. We talk about it all here. I give you tips and techniques that will allow you to have repeatable moves, education only, but run your own numbers and read those contracts. Hey, every week I get new questions from across social media, how to buy real estate with little or no money down. My history has been that I have bought everything from single family to 400 unit apartment complexes with little or no money down. Hey, I give straight answers and clean examples and a checklist for each one of those. Matter of fact, if you're somebody who's looking to get into the real estate business, or you are looking to scale your current business and you're maybe feeling a little bit stuck in where we're at in this market right now, I'm hosting a masterclass on December 9th. And it'll be a 2-hour masterclass, 5 o'clock Central Time. It's going to start. It's going to be on Zoom. It's been filling up really fast. So make sure you grab a seat. Go to masterclass.multifamilysecrets.com and get registered for that class. It's a free event. I'm going to teach you one technique that I have used over and over again to buy multiple pieces of real estate, whether they were single family, 4 unit, 60 unit, 40 unit, 400 unit apartment complexes with little and no money down, using one simple technique. And I'm going to break it down for you when we get to that master class. And I'm going to teach you that technique so that you could walk away from class, from that master class, and go out and use that technique and start buying real estate. So, I've been talking about this now for a few weeks, and it's interesting how it's kind of caught fire out there, right? Some other operators, some other people are talking about it, and there's a big buzz about it right now. Why is that? Why is there such a big buzz right now? Well, because of where we're at in the market cycle, of where housing prices are, where housing sales are, where we're at in economically with the fundamentals. And I'm not going to get into a bunch of details on that today. If that's something you have an interest in, give me a call. We can chat about it. But it is the time in the cycle to be able to utilize these techniques to go out and add some real estate to your portfolio. Hey, let me ask you a question. If you owned one house, do you feel that if you're owning a house and you have a tenant in there, it's an investment property for you, that you're better off than some other people around you, some other people that you know? That people who own one piece of real estate have more wealth building in their life than the average American out there. Now, with that little bit of knowledge, what if you owned 5 homes? You could be truly wealthy, and you don't have to go buy 5 homes today, but let's say you bought 1 home a year for the next 5 years. What would that do to your life? What would that do to you financially? I just want you to think about that. Let that resonate and sink in a little bit with you. But, since I've been talking about this over the last couple of months, I did my first master class a couple of weeks ago. We had a bunch of people that jumped on, and it was a great class. And I love teaching this system and these techniques. When I first got into real estate investing, the first seminar I ever went to was a Robert Allen seminar. Robert Allen was the king of no money down, other people's money. How to buy real estate with little or no money down. And, my first transaction ever, I bought with $1,000 out of my pocket. Seller paid the closing costs, everything else. And I was able to take over the payments on that property and to own it and operate it. And it cash flowed like $400 a month. I mean, who couldn't use another $400 a month in cash flow right now? Well, let me ask you this. If I could teach you that one technique that I used that time and use time and time again, wouldn't it make sense for you? So I hope to see you at that masterclass. But one of the questions I've gotten over the last couple of weeks here was about subject to, and the question from this woman was, is subject to financing safe? And how do you avoid the due on sale clause? So really, when you break down that question, there's two questions there, right? Is subject to financing safe? And my answer to that is yes, it's perfectly safe, depending on the technique you use and the terms you employ in that property when during that acquisition. You see, the whole point behind real estate investing is not so much ownership as it is control. You want to control the real estate, and the more real estate you can control, the greater wealth you can create for yourself. How do we avoid the due on sale clause? Well, I use a system I teach. It's called a master lease system. And that master lease gives you the ability to control a piece of real estate, not have the due on sale clause triggered, to be able to keep an existing mortgage in place if that mortgage should stay in place. It gives you the ability to have first right of refusal of sale. I do a couple of things with that master lease where I tie the purchase for me to be able to purchase that property at a later date to that master lease. But a master lease gives you the ability to own that real estate, improve that real estate, rent that real estate, keep that real estate, buy that real estate, sell that real estate, whatever you want to do to that piece of real estate. So by having that one technique and that one system, it totally changes the game for you. And if you're an investor or a new investor looking to change the game of your financial future, looking to change the game of your real estate investing, then this one technique is going to be beneficial for you. Another question that I got was, what is a loan assumption and when does it beat a new loan? A loan assumption beats a new loan when the interest rate and the payment of the existing loan is less than what a new loan would be. So we bought a piece of real estate last year. It was 65 unit multifamily deal that we used the master lease system to structure it. We left the existing mortgage in place because at the time, new mortgage rates were 6.5% to 7% on multifamily. And there was a mortgage in place that was a fixed rate mortgage for 10 years at 3.9%. So it only made sense to keep that existing mortgage in place because it kept us in a positive yield position. And if your interest rate is higher than your cap rate on the purchase, you're in a negative yield position. That's a whole nother story, right? That's a whole nother batch of questions to answer. But what I want to tell you is it always makes sense to leave better loan terms in place when you do an assumption. Now, you can do assumptions on residential. So if it's an FHA mortgage or a VA mortgage, you can do an assumption on residential. You can actually do assumptions on every commercial loan that's out there. Now, you always want to make sure that the loan that's in place are loan terms that are conducive to the market, to the environment, that are going to be better than new loan terms. So make sure that you do your due diligence on that. When you look at loan terms, there's a number of things to look at, not just the interest rate. So if you have more questions on looking at loan terms, ask me about those because there's this thing in a loan called covenants. And if you don't stay within those covenants, you start to trigger a lot of different things that can happen. So you have to be careful of that as well. But a loan assumption is totally legal and it definitely can beat a new loan anytime. Now, the other time that a loan assumption would make sense is if that loan keeps you in a position that you're going to cash flow on the property. This is a cash flow game. And if you're not cash flowing, you can't bank on the equity in the future. Although we know real estate goes up in value, right? I remember when I first got in real estate, that 4-unit building I bought, I think I paid, $112,000 for a 4-unit. Today, they're at least $112,000 per unit, right? If not more. So depending on the market you're in. So, it always makes sense to pay attention to that. So I hope that helps answer the question. Had another question from a listener last week, Jonathan, who said, how do lease options work for buyers with little cash? Well, it's all about the terms. Lease options are just another way, and a lease option is really incorporated into the master lease, and that's that system I teach. That's that technique. But a lease option is incorporated into that master lease. And how do they work for a buyer with little cash? Well, it's all based on the terms. Are you giving the seller full price? Or are you trying to negotiate on price? What are you doing about repairs on the property? What are you doing about the current loan that's in place? Is there a second? Is the seller holding a second? Who's carrying closing costs? All of these things are covered during the negotiations of that property and the terms that you structure, that initial offer. And I always say, create a win-win situation, right? Don't feel like you got advantage over the seller or that the seller got advantage over you. Create a win-win strategy, a win-win situation so that everybody benefits from it. The other thing is, with little cash in your pocket, even bad credit, no experience, if you know somebody that you can partner with that has a little bit of money, or you can raise a little bit of cash to buy a property. A lot of times, in many cases, it doesn't take a lot of cash to be able to do this. So, I teach this strategy. I teach these techniques in my master class, the little and no money down financing strategies. So if you're interested in learning more and, adding another tool to your toolbox to help you buy some more real estate going into 2026, then you want to definitely take advantage of this. But December 9th, I can't believe it's going to be December already, right? December 9th, masterclass at 5 p.m. Central Time. It'll be on Zoom. And we've had a lot of people register this last week. So, seating is limited. So get there. But go to masterclass.multifamilysecrets.com. And we'll see you at that class. Another question that came in from Sarah this week. Sarah was asking, how do you negotiate seller credits for closing costs, repairs, and a rate buy down without scaring the seller? Great question, Sarah. And one thing that I want to say about that is just ask. I remember years ago, one of the first sales seminars I ever went to a Tom Hopkins seminar, and Tom Hopkins was one of those old, public speakers, motivational speakers, talked about selling, talked about sales. And, he used to say this. He'd say, okay, I'm going to give you the big secret. I'm going to give you the big secret about how to ask for the sale. Here's what you're going to do. And he'd build you up. And then he'd go, just ask. And then he'd say, and he'd scream at the top of his lungs, shut up, because a lot of times what we do, because this is a sales thing, right? You're selling the seller on your techniques, your ability to buy that real estate, own that real estate, operate that real estate, and that the seller is not going to be in jeopardy with that sale anymore. But Tom Hopkins would say, just ask, right? And that's all it is. Just ask the seller, hey, listen, I'd like you to pay the taxes. I'd like you to pay the closing costs and all the rightful fees. I'll pay my attorney's fees, and I'll bring money for repairs and maintenance. So always ask for those things. If you're doing a new loan, you can do this rate buy down and ask the seller to pay points. So it's always just about asking the question, see where the seller's mindset is, and see if the seller's willing to participate with you. So a lot of ways to do that. And it's all about negotiations. It's all about the way you frame it, the way you ask the seller, and the way that you're willing to be flexible in the situation. So, Sarah, that was a great question. And then the last question this week was, where do you find down payment assistance beyond FHA, including city grants and employer aid? Great questions. There are so many programs out there. If you're a first-time home buyer, almost every city in the country has some type of a first-time home buyer assistance program where they will give you grant money that you don't have to pay back to help you with your down payment. So, when it comes to little or no money down, there's all kinds of sources out there. You might have people in your life that are willing to help you. There's government programs out there that are willing to help you. FHA, VA. VA is a no money down program. If you're a veteran and you have those VA benefits, you can buy a home, even an investment property today, with little or no money down. If you have a VA home that you're trying to sell and it's got a VA mortgage on it, somebody, even a non-veteran, can go and assume that mortgage. The other thing that I want to talk about is I work very closely with a lender who has a creative financing program. And it's the first lender that I've ever heard of doing a program like this. But what they do is they help you structure a loan where the seller holds a second mortgage on that property, and that second mortgage can be used as your down payment. So you know what? Are there strategies out there? There are absolutely strategies out there. There's multiple strategies. And, let me ask you this. If you had 20 tools in your toolbox, right? You're gonna nail a nail into a stud, and you're doing a repair. You don't have just one hammer for doing that. You're not using a finishing hammer. You're going to use a framing hammer, right? If you're nailing a piece of trim up, you're not going to use a framing hammer for that. You're going to use a trim hammer for that. So, I tell you this because if you have 5 tools in your toolbox that are subject to lease option, owner finance, creative structure, and, a master lease, one or the other of those tools is going to work in a different situation. So get the tools for your toolbox. So make it out to the master class. Hey, thanks for listening to the Mic Drop Show today. Follow us for more of this, would you? We're here every Wednesday morning, bringing some more great content. Sometimes I bring a guest on. I do have a guest that I'm going to be bringing on in the next couple of weeks. A good friend of mine, Joe Holm. He is here in California, and he's been investing for 40 years and owns real estate that he does everything creatively, little and no money down. And we're going to have a great conversation in the next couple of weeks. So listen in for that. Make sure you like us, love us, follow us, share this with a friend. If you know somebody who's been saying, hey, I want to go into the real estate business, but I don't know how, this is going to be totally educational for you. So you can get that education. But here's what I always say. People always say, well, knowledge is power. Well, I don't believe that 100%, right? Yes, knowledge is power. But actually, knowledge gives you the ability to execute and take action. Action is the power. Execution is the power. So the more knowledge you get, the more action you're required to take. I talked to somebody yesterday who said, well, I just want to learn all this stuff first before I start to do anything. And I said, no, you need somebody in your life that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to push you forward, that's going to help you excel and grow your business. I had a coach in my life for many, many years that, every year they pushed me, held me accountable to my goals, my objectives, and the tasks I was going to do during the week. And my business continually grew. And everybody needs somebody like that in their life. So, hey, listen, if you're looking for a deeper walk in this, join me for the masterclass. If you have questions, throw them in the chat, DM me during the week. At the masterclass, I'm going to share scripts. We're going to have Q&A. I'm going to share how to find the best sellers out there, the best deals out there, how to negotiate, strategies for negotiating. So save your seat for the masterclass on December 9th at 5 p.m. Central. Go to masterclass.multifamilyinvestmentsecrets.com. multifamilyinvestmentsecrets.com. Hey, the next episode, we're going to break down seller conversations for creative finance. So next week on Wednesday, we're going to talk about seller conversations, the right questions to ask, how to ask those questions, how to respond to the answers, and how to overcome some objections. I think a lot of times we don't do this. We don't take this tool out of our toolbox because we're afraid of what the seller's going to say, what the objection might be. Once you know how to handle any objection, boy, you're in the game. So look forward to seeing you in the masterclass. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. If I can help you before the masterclass, call me. I have a buddy, and he and I strategize all the time about, hey, what about this situation? How do we handle this in this technique? And what do we say to the seller? So we're always looking for property like this and opportunities, and on the verge of buying a couple right now. So we'll see you in the master class. Or if I don't see you next week, have a happy Thanksgiving, which is coming up quickly here, but I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great week, everybody.